Now, recently, Minister of Public Utilities Marvin Gonzales announced that there is a backlog of over 2,000 plus applications for people wanting new service connections. In some instances, customers were told to pay bribes to get connected. Now, this raised the question of the efficiency at the Water and Sewerage Authority, WASA, and ethical concerns about its processes. So joining us to discuss a way forward is the Minister of Public Utilities himself, Mr. Marvin Gonzales. Mr. Gonzales, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Of course.
And good morning to Trinidad and Tobago as well.
Now, Minister, let's just back up a bit. So we heard about the 2,000 the applications that are outstanding. First of all, what applications do people need to get approved by WASA? What are some of the approvals that need to be made, and which one has the most backlog? Is it really the new service connections?
Right, so you have the new services division within the Water and Sewerage Authority that is responsible for processing applications for building development approvals, plumbing approvals, and applications for residential customers. So there are already three main forms of application for approvals to the new services division. In each category, it is a potential new customer. So for building development, there are a number of people who are constructing apartments, constructing buildings, commercial buildings, industrial buildings, etc. And the developer is required to make an application to the Water and Sewerage Authority so that the authority can approve and recommend the manner in which water is connected to its main transmission or distribution system. If there is a need for a sewer connection, whether the sewer connection is going to be integrated to WASA's centralized sewer system, or whether or not the developer is required to establish a centralized sewage treatment facility on the compound or on the development. So the developer is required to submit his outlines, his approvals, etc., and he has to wait until WASA provides the necessary approval before there is connection to its system. And then you have plumbing approvals. Again, the plumbing inspector will submit its isometric plumbing designs to the Water and Sewerage Authority with respect to a building, and WASA is responsible for reviewing those designs and giving the necessary approvals. Of course, if those designs are not approved, then the developer will not be connected, or no approvals will be granted for that developer to become a paid customer, a registered customer on WASA's network. Then you have the residential customer, someone who is constructing a home or HDC, as the case may be, and that residential customer is required to make an approval to the Water and Sewerage Authority to become a paying customer. So all these levels of approvals and different categories of customers, they're required to pay a fee, some in the region of $1,000, and in some regions I think you have a fee of $2,000 or $3,000 depending on the nature of the process or the approval that the customer is seeking from the Water and Sewerage Authority. And then you have land developers. And land developers are also required to submit their design, submit their planning approval, the plumbing designs, etc., to the Water and Sewerage Authority. And unless they get that necessary approval, that building will not become usable. The bank will not be able to close off on all of the legal documentation, etc. So it is a very critical aspect of the development of Trinidad and Tobago, especially where it concerns property development, residential development, etc. A lot of people don't necessarily talk about that aspect of WASA's operation, because when you talk about WASA, you're thinking about water distribution, water transmission, water treatment, right, sewage services, etc. But a critical component of WASA is its obligation to approve development designs for new development, for plumbing designs, etc., and for residential customers.
Now, these approvals that you mentioned, Minister, this falls within the 2,000 applications that you're actually referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
So a number of them, you have approximately over 1,000 or 1,200 applications for developments. No, I think I get that wrong. So it's about 500 or 600 applications for development. For plumbing, you have approximately 800. and the rest would be for residential customers.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what was also interesting was the issue of the bribes, that you can pay a bribe.
Yeah.
And of course, this raises the concern, we could call it corruption at WASA. I mean, how is the ministry treating with this?
Right. So as Minister of Public Utilities, a lot of people reach out to you for assistance. And I find it kind of strange that persons would reach out to me, they would get my number, they send me emails where they would indicate that they would have paid for a connection for 2-3 years and they are waiting approval. And because of that long wait, they cannot close off their arrangement with their financial institution. They cannot complete the construction of their building. They cannot occupy their homes. They cannot occupy their apartments. It is impeding the completion of, the design of a building, etc. So given the number of queries I was getting and complaints that I was getting on my phone, I liaised with the chairman of the authority, Mr. Ravi Nanga, and I asked him to set up a committee, a subcommittee of the board to look into what is happening at the New Services Division and to advise on what we can do to improve the levels of service and to expedite the application process so that people, they can complete their buildings and they can occupy their homes, etc. And what we found after that committee was set up and was charged with that responsibility was a backlog of 2,000 applications, some people waiting 3-4 years. And when you have people waiting so long to get approval, what unfortunately will happen is that people will start offering bribes to employees of the Water and Sewerage Authority. I mean, a number of people also called me and they told me how much money they paid in bribes to get their connection. Some people paid up to $5,000-6,000 to get their connections, right? And that is not because they want to do it. It is because they need their connection to occupy the building. They would have expended a lot of resources, financial resources, to construct their homes, to construct their buildings, etc. And a frustrated customer can be pushed towards paying a bribe to get their connection because they want to move on with their lives. I mean, the same thing happened, I recall, when I was head of the legal department in the Ministry of Works and Transport, and we were looking at the operations of the licensing division. The same thing was happening there, people paying large sums of money to get their driver's permit to conduct normal transaction at the licensing authority. You go down there, you have to take a day off from work to renew your driver's permit, to make an application for a variation of your driver's permit. And what some people tend to do within the system is that they exploit that on their customers and extort monies and bribes from their customers to get basic services. So essentially, it was the same thing that is taking place at the Water and Sewerage Authority. The situation and the entire process is heavily paper-based. It is manual, and on a number of occasions, Kimberly, documents and files are missing. Normally, when people submit their applications, they have to submit with the application Town and Country Planning approval. And the Town and Country Planning approval normally would last for about 1 year. And if your application process is stuck within the Water and Sewerage Authority for 3-4 years, by the time they reach to that person's application, the other statutory approvals that they would have gotten in other state agencies would have expired, and they would have to go back through the process at Town and Country Planning and the regional cooperation. So it is a very frustrating experience on the part of customers. And the customers are feeling the brunt of that dysfunction within the New Services Division. And we couldn't allow this situation to continue, because in addition to the frustration experienced by customers, Kimberly, you are talking about potential revenue that had come to an authority that is cash-strapped.
But well, I mean, Minister, as we're talking about revenue, I mean, one of the things that the WASA has been talking about is the restructuring plan, right? The transformation plan. I mean,
yes.
Where are we on this plan?
So the transformation plan is completed. The Prime Minister, you would recall, a couple months ago had asked me to meet with the unions representing WASA workers as the NUGFW PSA. I have completed my meetings with them. They've submitted their views and their recommendations on the restructuring. They've all agreed that we need to restructure the Water and Sewerage Authority, and given the state of affairs of the authority, certainly we cannot continue. So I am now in the process of compiling the recommendations that I've received from the unions so as to submit it to the Prime Minister so that the Cabinet and the Prime Minister can take into consideration the recommendations and the views of the unions representing WASA workers. Insofar as it relates to the transformation plan, that is completed. I'm awaiting a further meeting with the Prime Minister and the Cabinet subcommittee, and the Cabinet will decide, having regard to the views and the recommendations of the union representing WASA workers, the government will very soon, hopefully, come to the population and indicate to the population the way forward for the transformation of the Water and Sewerage Authority.
Now, Minister, at the risk of jumping ahead, with the restructuring plan, are we going to see people losing their jobs?
Well, so in the transformation process, you have to look at WASA and you have to ask the question whether or not WASA is fit for purpose. A number of the job descriptions in WASA, they were designed maybe 50, 40 years ago. Things have changed significantly, automation, technology, and what have you. So if you're looking at transforming an organization and repurposing an organization, that automation and technology must form a central nucleus in the transformation of the authority, then there need to be a redesign of job specifications, and there are some jobs, and they're given their description and given their responsibility, there'll be absolutely no need for. So I will not shy away from the question that we may not have job displacements, but it will obviously create new opportunities for young people who are so passionate and trained in modern technology, because the transformation, we need to create a smart water network where you can control your plants, you can control your valves, you can measure your pressures, etc., utilizing modern technology. And therefore, we need to examine the staff composition, the training, the qualification of staff, so it will create a number of opportunities for young people.
Now, Minister, as we're talking about the staff, recently the acting CEO of WASA, Mr. Sheldon Shepherd, he has been suspended for a month. Can you give us some details into what would have caused this suspension?
Yes, I know that have been pressed on numerous occasions, and I know that there are a number of political operators trying to put their own spin on what transpired to mislead the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I think I need to set the record straight on that. The Board of Commissioners, looking at the state of affairs of the authority, the financial position of the authority, would have recognized that there are a number of customers owing WASA large sums of money. And so we have taken a decision to have the names of those customers published in the national media, inviting them to come to the authority and to make arrangements with the authority to settle their outstanding arrears. So in light of that, a decision was taken to have some names of large consumers published in the media. And when the publication actually took place, the board recognized that a number of names, a couple of names were omitted from the list that was approved by the board, which triggered an investigation as to why that happened. So the acting CEO then was asked to explain. The board was not satisfied with the explanation provided, and an investigation was conducted, and a decision was taken to suspend the CEO on 1 month without pay.
Okay. And Minister, just switching gears a bit, when you assumed office in August 2020, you would have made an undertaking, in fact, to tackle the country's water problem. It's been almost 2 years. What progress has been done thus far?
We have made a number of progress. One of the key initiatives that we have started was the Community Water Improvement Program, which was launched in September last year, where we undertook a number of projects across Trinidad and Tobago. In the first phase, we successfully completed 22 projects impacting the lives of 100,000 citizens. We started in Pitch Road in Mova. We went to Chamflair, Guayco, Tamina, Subada Trace, Ramjatan Trace. We have installed boosters at Aripo, in San Rafael, all over Trinidad and Tobago. And what we would have seen with the successful completion of these projects is just not that you have 100,000 citizens benefiting from an improved water supply. We would have seen a number of communities that never had water supply for 40 or 50 years, for the very first time getting a water supply. The third phase of the Community Water Improvement Program is going to start next week, and we intend to impact the lives of 25,000 citizens in the third phase. What we also notice is that given the improvements that we've had in that program, CWIP, a number of customers, their water schedule would have improved significantly, and therefore at this point in time you have about approximately 64% of the people of Trinidad and Tobago having an improved water supply of 24/4 to 24/7. This has never happened before. So we are seeing a good trend, a good positive trend. So we have to ramp up the execution of seaway projects. But in addition to that, we've published our strategic action plan, which would lead the directive on how we intend to continue to the transformation process and the improvement in the water supply. And in so doing, the Cabinet recently approved the Northwest Regional Improvement Program, Water Improvement Program, and this program is going to be kicked off in about a week or 2 weeks in Port of Spain. We intend to kick it off in City Hall in Port of Spain, and the Northwest region would start from the eastern side, which is at Mount Hope, down to the western side at Chagaramas, that entire region, hundreds of thousands of customers. And we expect that on the successful execution and the implementation of the Northwest program, and all those customers within that Northwest region will see a dramatic improvement in their water supply. And key and central to the program is digitization and automation of WASA's network. Very soon I'll be going to Cabinet with a Tobago water improvement program to improve the water supply in some critical aspects of Tobago, because you know the economy is opening again, a number of people traveling to Tobago, and we cannot have people going to Tobago not having access to clean and potable water. Very soon we'll be doing the same for Northeast, North Central, South, because at the end of the day, what we have recognized, every region has its unique situation. You cannot come up with a pipeline project and apply it across Trinidad and Tobago. So you have to examine the unique challenges in every single region and design a plan and a program to respond to those challenges, and that's the way in which people can truly see an improvement in their water supply.
Now, Minister, quickly, because I know we're actually running out of time. Now, WASA leaks account for a loss of millions of gallons of water. How are we going to start to deal with that issue?
We have started a leak management program about 3 or 4 months ago. So far, we have successfully completed 10,000 leaks on WASA's transmission and distribution grid. There's approximately 2,500 more leaks in its backlog, and we are tackling that over the next 2 to 3 months. And I anticipate that given the improvements that we've had and the response time on the part of the authority to address leaks, I anticipate that by the month of July, the end of July, the leak backlog will be completely eradicated, thereby putting the authority and some of its private contractors working in support of the authority to respond to leaks within a period of 24 to 48 hours.
Quickly, Minister, any updates on the rate increase for electricity?
Yes, so the RIC is currently looking at the business plan that was submitted by the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission. And very soon, the RIC is intended to engage the population, because part of the rate review process is a robust engagement with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because it's an application process. So the authority needs to, the commission needs to justify that rate increase, and I anticipate that very soon the RIC will be communicating with the people of Trinidad and Tobago in that process to complete it, and will make the appropriate recommendation to the government as to what is an appropriate rate for its various customers of the commission.
And Minister, we have about 2 minutes, or just under 2 minutes left, but quickly, I know that people have experienced the island-wide blackout a few months ago. What has been put in place to ensure it never happens again, especially as we look at the dissemination of information?
Right, so we weren't satisfied in the way in which we manage our communication. That was indicated clearly in the report that I laid in Parliament a couple of weeks ago, and certain recommendations were made to improve the manner in which we communicate with the population in crisis of this nature. Now, one of the things that we were challenged with is the fact that a blackout was never categorized or defined as a natural disaster. And a main recommendation that was made by that committee was that we define and we categorize a national blackout as a national disaster, thereby operationalizing and bringing into operation some of the key agencies like the ODPM to coordinate the response to this particular situation. They've also made some recommendations with respect to national security and some other issues, and I can guarantee and assure the people of Trinidad and Tobago that I've put together a committee, the MPU working with the commission, and fortunately, the investigators that comprise that committee, they have offered their services to work with all the state agencies to implement the recommendations in that report. But we must also point out that the committee agreed that TNTEC's distribution network is a very robust one, and the chances of that national blackout happening again is very low. However, we must prepare for it. And the necessary training, the necessary coordination is taking place to improve the resilience of TNTEC's distribution network, but also to prepare the technocrats and the trained engineers with the IPPs and the Commission to be able to respond to a national blackout, especially a blackout where all of your machines are the independent power producers going down and starting these machines, what you call black start operation, all over again. So we're going to do a number of simulation so that in the unfortunate event that this thing happening again, because it can happen to any network, the activities of the various bodies and stakeholders will be properly coordinated, and everyone will understand their role and their responsibility so as to minimize the impact on the national community.
Mr. Gonzales, thank you so much for joining us. And now it's always a pleasure. Thank you again.
I'm looking forward to being invited again to continue with this.